So this is my new Santa Cruz Megatower, and I already know what you're thinking. Nope, it's not a Yeti. You might be wondering what led me to consider even a bike in this category, and the simple answer is that I've decided to keep my Yeti a while longer as my everyday trail bike. And in classic N+1 tradition, I decided to pick up a long travel 29er for even bigger days. So what's special about this bike in a crowded segment filled with terrific options? Well, let's talk about it. And for those that don't know, the Santa Cruz Megatower is a long travel 29er with 160 millimeters of travel front and rear. Yeah, it's a pretty big bike. Or is it? More on that later. So this bike is only available in carbon, and I chose to go with a slightly lighter CC frame with a Fox 36 and Grip 2 and Shimano's 12-speed XTR drivetrain and brakes, as well as i9's brand new 101 wheel set. And as for the rear shock, I'm actually going back and forth between the stock RockShox Super Deluxe and a Fox X2. So here are two things you probably already know about this bike. And number one, this is pretty obvious, is that it's extremely capable and it likes to go really fast.
Oh yeah. This bike just wants to go fast.
And I'm not ashamed to admit that this is more bike than I'll ever need in this lifetime. The second thing you might know about this bike is that it's extremely versatile. So not only can you tweak the head tube angle and bottom bracket height via flip chip, but you could also adjust the chainstay length by 10 millimeters to fine-tune your balance. And you can even purchase the bike with a coil shock, so the tuning combinations are virtually endless, making this truly a bike for nerds. But here are two things you didn't know about the Santa Cruz Megatower. And first, it's not as big feeling or as unwieldy as you might think. And with a name like the Megatower, you think this bike would ride like a mini downhill bike. But in fact, the Hightower and even their aggressive XC trail bike, the Tallboy, has almost bang-on geometry numbers as this bike. And at 5 feet 10 inches tall, it actually went with a size medium instead of a large. And after swapping out to a 50mm stem and moving the seat slightly rearward, which is actually something you can do on bikes with steeper seat-tube angles, I can say this bike fits me perfectly. The seated climbing position is comfortable and I can move it around easily in the tack position. But don't get me wrong, you're not going to beat your cross-country buddies on the climbs. But as long as they don't mind waiting for you at the top, then you shouldn't mind waiting for them at the bottom. So let's dive into how the suspension feels. And the first thing you notice is how different it feels than previous generation VPP designs. And in my experience, those bikes pedaled very firm under power, but was less than supportive everywhere else. So gone is that snappy pedal feel, replaced with something a lot more supple, which greatly increases traction over technical climbs. And as long as you have the power, this bike definitely has the traction. While there's a bit more movement under heavy pedaling, I definitely prefer the predictability of this newer design, and it's much more in line with some of the best suspension designs out there. The mid-stroke feel is taut and supportive, and every millimeter is purposeful with nothing wasted. This is definitely not a sofa cushion ride though, which brings me to the second thing you probably didn't know about this bike, is that it rides much firmer than you'd imagine from a 160mm bike.
It's really taut and supportive, right at the edge of maybe, I hate to use the word harsh, but to some people they might use that word. And I personally like the feel of that because I don't want the trail to be muted. I like to feel what's going on with the tires through my hands and feet. But I think what's going on is not so much the suspension tune, but this just like burly, stiff chassis that this bike has. You do feel some vibration and trail feedback through that chassis. Again, something that I really like. And that's really what kind of drew me to this bike, to be honest. This is not a sofa cushion bike, but if you're looking for something a little more engaging a little more right at the edge of trail bike possibility, this is a really good option.
So how does the Megatower feel when you're descending? And full disclaimer, much of what I'm about to tell you has more to do with the category of bike than the Megatower itself. But in a nutshell, this bike goes about its business in a quiet, calm, and unflappable way. But it gives you just enough information to keep you engaged. So it feels like 10 tenths on my trail bike feels like 6 tenths on this bike.
And the harder you ride this bike, the better it feels. Shocker, huh?
I didn't have to change my riding style for the Megatower, but it does encourage me to be more aggressive, and it's able to give back whatever I'm able to put in. It also teaches you to carry momentum because it's not the lightest bike out there, and you can't accelerate your way out of a bad corner, as you can sometimes do on your trail bike. Going back to the original question, what sets this bike apart from others in arguably the hottest category of bike right now? And I'd say it's the tweakability that I described earlier, wrapped in one of the most quiet, stiff, and quality frames out there. This bike isn't trying to push the boundaries in any particular way, but it's versatile enough that you can build it up with a coil shock and set it up for full park duty, or slap on an air shock along with some lighter wheels and tires for those all-day adventures. It's also for geeks who like to tweak with their bikes, and you know exactly who you are. I hope you guys like this review, and remember, those trails don't get easier, you get better. We'll see you on the next one.
One thing I noticed about this bike, a lot of people say with these newer bikes you need to ride more aggressively. I didn't necessarily have to change my riding style, but if anything, this bike makes you just want to get after it just that little bit more, which is cool. Brakes, oh my goodness, they're amazing. I have to say,